Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Again, welcome this morning to part 2 of the 3-part statewide training series hosted by the Ohio Urban Community Action Network. Today's topic is organizational standards led by community action agency policy leaders and field experts. My name is Yvonne Sherrill, and I proudly serve as the CEO for OUCAN. And I just celebrated my 3rd year anniversary in January. I know you're probably clapping for me. Thank you. The mission of OUCAN is to empower Ohio's urban community action agencies through education, networking, and advocate for policies that alleviate poverty and promote self-sufficiency. OUCAN is one of the nation's oldest urban community action networks dedicated to serving families in 16 large metropolitan areas with a population of 50,000 plus folks, while providing trending and innovative training for more than 2,500 staff and agency leaders statewide. OUCAN member agencies are also known in their respective counties as staple service institutions for more than half of Ohio's low to moderate income population, and 62% of those households living at or below the federal poverty level. So today, the network is comprised of 9 urban community action agencies representing the largest urban counties in Ohio. And we are a leading source in strengthening the social and economic security of families and their communities. And so we would like for you to consider joining OUCAN. You must be an urban or metropolitan community action agency as defined by community action agency and represent a population of 50,000 or more. Please contact us at the information provided below, either at our website, or you can contact us via our email. I am so honored and privileged to present to you today 3 experts within the urban community action agencies who will be our trainers for today. So Ms. Keely Gustin, Chief Policy Officer with Miami Valley Community Action Partnership. Ike Hickman, the Social Service Compliance Coordinator with Commission Area County, Erie, Huron, and Richland counties. And then, of course, Marilyn Montez, who is kind of semi-retired, but we're so happy that she is still in the community action world, and she is a consultant for Montez Human Resources Generalist. Before we go into the rest of the training, I want to just give you a couple of housekeeping items. Remember, this training is being recorded and it will be available on the OUCAN's YouTube channel post the training. So you will be able to share it and go back and reference it if you need additional information. Participants on the call today will have access to your Zoom features. So that means that you can choose to mute, unmute when you need to, be on screen, not on screen. But what we do ask is, because we are expecting such a large participation today, if you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat box. That will help us be able to try to address them a little quickly and get it to the right person. And then lastly, all of the presentation materials will be available about 5 to 7 days after the training. So again, you will receive that information directly through your registration information. And we love social media, you guys. So if you hear some great nuggets, if you are having a organizational standards watch party with us today, I know that's highly unlikely, but let's say you are. Please take some pictures and share the information on our social media. We are present on Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube and Instagram. So for all of our platforms, we would love to continue to highlight the great work that is happening in Ohio's urban community action agencies. Now, it is my pleasure to bring to you Ms. Amy Bullard, the Manager for Community Service Programs and Community Service Division. Ms. Amy?
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Awesome.
We can.
Well, I'm not going to take a whole lot of time this morning. I was thrilled to be asked to jump on here and just give you a welcome from the Office of Community Assistance here at the Ohio Department of Development. It's really our privilege to work with all of you in utilizing the funding that we distribute from the CSBG grant. As you all know, the organizational standards are a required evaluation that needs to be done actually annually. And we're working to streamline that process. I said at the OACA conference, streamlining is kind of my focus this year. And so the org standards process is the first part of that. After that, we'll get into looking at what we're going to have for the next CSBG application. I know you don't even want to think about that because we just finished, but we want the next one to be as simple as we can make it while obtaining whatever information we have to fulfill our federal requirements and state requirements. But for today, I congratulate you for dedicating the time to dive into the org standards and learning what information is needed. I've actually been diving into the org standards this week too. We are adding some notes to the NCAP self-assessment document that we'll be sending out via your field reps in a few weeks after the IU goes out. It will have some notes on there and things to help try to make the process simpler for you and make the review process go smoothly. So that's where I'm at right now. I think you guys will be getting a little more information about that as you go along today, but thank you for taking the time to learn about this so that hopefully every one of you will get 100% or as close to it. That is certainly our goal. Thanks, Yvonne, for putting this on and for including us.
Well, thank you, Amy. We appreciate you and your team representing the community development analysis and monitors for your always support, ongoing support, the funding, and making sure that we are doing the very best that we can to serve our constituents and making sure that folks are prepared to lead a life that is self-sufficient. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Again, I just want to remind you, just give you a couple of little highlights. As we progress throughout today's training, I want to highlight a few key notes for you. So at this time, I need you all to take out your phones, take out your notepads, whatever. If you're a Generation Z person, you probably using your phone. And if you're a Generation Xer like me, you still got a good old notepad all ready to go. So take it out. And I want to give you a few notes from our friends at the Ohio Department of Development so that we can make sure that we're on the same page and that we're looking forward to success. So please keep in mind that, one, today's trainers will provide kind of an overview of the organizational standards while highlighting some problematic areas and opportunities for improvement and some best practices. We hope to get all your questions in, and if there are some questions that may be a tad bit above our pay grade, we ask that you reach out to your field monitors directly. We are not claiming to be the absolute experts, but if your situation requires a little bit more information and some details, we ask that you reach out to your field monitors directly. You should have received a copy of the state assessment tool in your email notification yesterday. If not, Sharon will drop a copy of the document in the chat box, so you could pull it out in the chat box. Sharon's going to put it in there. We encourage you to please take the time, familiarize yourself and your team with the tool in preparation of the state visit. Listen, I don't have to tell you all that the more prepared we are, the less likely for errors. So the more familiar you are and you working with your team to get ready, as Amy mentioned before, we all want to be successful. So please become more familiar with the assessment tool. Now keep in mind, the CSBG Act requires this type of monitoring at least every 3 years, right? And in the summer and the fall, the reps will be visiting agencies in person and reviewing CSBG funded programs of the agencies. So let me repeat that one more time. In the summer and the fall, the reps will be out in person reviewing the CSBG funded programs. And they will conduct the monitoring, write this down, for CSBG 2022 to 2023. Which will include the review of client files, expenditures, documentation, and program participation. So this is what's going to be reviewed this year's summer and fall. The state is also planning to attend board meetings, but this is tentative. So Amy and her team will provide information for regarding attendance at board meetings a little later, but just keep in mind that that may be a possibility. Since the organization standards must be assessed annually, the state will be pulling them out as a standalone remote process, and they will be sending details soon about completing the assessment this spring. So again, you will receive more details from Amy and the team, but just know that we have been informed that the organizational standards will be pulled out, and again, it will be a remote process. We also want to emphasize right now that we want you to be very thoughtful and careful in preparing your agency documentation to prove that each standard is met. So when you go through the assessment tool, it is very clean. The new tool is very precise. It has the documentation that is recommended and where you are going to meet or meet those standards. So make sure again that you are reviewing the tool, but most of the standards only require the documents needed to verify meeting the standard versus having all of the documents listed. So when you go through the tool, there will be a list of documentations. But as we've been consulted by ODOD, most standards only require documents needed to verify the meeting that standard. You don't necessarily have to do all of them. And each standard documentation will be scanned together for one upload and named with the standard number. So there will be about 58 uploads plus the completed self-assessment form. So keep in mind, you have one time to upload the information, which is why we are encouraging you, strongly encouraging you to become more familiar with the the assessment and the documentation. Because once you are asked to upload that information, you can't go back and change it. You can't go back, and that will automatically set to an incorrect or unmet standard. So again, familiarize yourself and note that the state is asking us to be more thoughtful about not only identifying that documentation, but the page number, the highlighted information, and have it uploaded and ready to go. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. And the last thing I want to bring to your attention, listen, our CAA family, we have some problematic areas. And our brother Ike is going to bring it to our attention today, and we're going to have some family conversation about it. But we have some problematic areas, and we are happy to have the support from ODOD so that we can address those areas. So if you will take a quick screenshot, a grab, or whatever you need to do, and identify, familiarize yourself with those problem areas, particularly Section 5. So we all need to come together to do a much better job of addressing those standards. So again, take a screenshot, please, and we'll continue to send you this information. But for right now, take a screenshot and begin to share with your team so that we are familiar with those areas that are a little bit more problematic. Again, I want to thank Amy Bullard and all of our field monitors. They are working hard to become much more consistent. They're working as a team so that we're all becoming successful during these site visits. And again, I just want you to also take this screenshot. If there are any questions that are above our pay grade or our knowledge area at this time, we ask that you reach out to your field monitors directly. They will provide you with the information that you need. And again, Sharon will drop that information in the chat box as well. Now, the last thing I want to hit you with is the resource page. So here on the resource page, we made it very, very easy. Again, I told you, get your phones ready. Get your phones ready. You can literally just click on these additional tools. So just take your screenshot. We're going to give you a couple of minutes to please take a screenshot or take your camera and pull in so that you can get the information using these QR codes for a easy download. Sharon, again, will provide the documents in the chat box, but we also wanted to make it easy for you to grab it today. And we'll put the information back up, and we will make sure that it is populated in the chat box. Now that I am done talking too much, it is my pleasure now to turn the training over to the experts or the people that I feel like I can go to when I have some questions. So again, we're going to address today the standards today in 3 parts. One, we have the beautiful Keely Gustin, who is going to go over maximum feasible participation standards. And then the very handsome Ike Hickman is going to, and remember, y'all better be nice to my brother Ike because he has the toughest area. He has the toughest area here, so be nice to Ike. but Ike is going to take us through the vision and direction standards. And then our very, very gorgeous Miss Marilyn Montez is going to go over operations and accountability standards. So with that in mind, get your pen and pencils out. I won't be back to talk to you because these people are going to take it away. So it's on you, Keely. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Give me just one moment. Oh, that's not the right thing, Keely. Come on. I did practice this, contrary to what this looks like right now. So that's excellent news. Okay, there we go. And here we are. Okay, can everyone see my slides here? Can I get some? I can't see at the bottom. Yes. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So good morning. I'm Keely Guston. I am the Chief Policy Officer at Miami Valley Community Action Partnership, and I am here to ease you into this training because Yvonne is absolutely right. Ike and Marilyn are going to be walking us through some very technical pieces of this project, and I think it's nice for us to start here, and I'm really happy to be presenting about it today. So before we get started, I wanted to define what maximum feasible participation is. I think it's a term, and I know in the policy space that I often operate when I'm working, advocating on the Hill, when I'm working with other partners, this is a term we use often, but I really wanted to kind of ground us in it while we are here working out the details of our standards monitoring tool. Okay, so maximum feasible participation is what makes community action unique. Okay, it is the heartbeat. That's kind of my theme, I think, underlying here. That's what I want you to think about. It's what keeps us going. It's stakeholder engagement. It's finding out from our clients through things like the community needs assessment, what they need in their communities to succeed and eliminate the causes and conditions of poverty. It's what motivates us every single day, and probably the reason that most of us work and continue to work in community action. I came across this quote. It was from Peace Community Action Agency, and I will, I thought I had the link on here. I apologize. I will make sure I get that updated on here so you can click on it. But very simply, maximum feasible participation demands that those living in poverty should determine the programs that will help them the most, okay? And if anyone is familiar in this room with Simon Sinek, I want to kind of bring you back to Simon Sinek is a motivational speaker. He is absolutely tremendous. If you're not familiar, his book Start With Why absolutely changed my life. He does a lot of leadership and organizational models. But Start With Why is related to maximum feasible participation because it's what motivates us. It's our why. We know every single day that our client feedback and our customer feedback and our customer input into the services they need is what makes community action different from other nonprofits. It's what we're founded on. It's really, truly, if you go back to the Office of Economic Opportunity, you go back to our 1964 founding, we're celebrating 60 years. This is what has kept us motivated and allowed us to utilize really, really valuable community service block grant funds to make things work in the right way. So I just want to ground you in that moment. That being said, as we ease into the standards evaluation and you look at standards 1, 2, and 3, relating to maximum feasible participation and specifically the community needs assessment, please be mindful that while it motivates us every day and it's our heartbeat and we are constantly thinking about it in all that we do, it also needs to be documented, okay? We have to show this not only to be compliant with our standards, but also to be able to communicate with the folks that make our funding decisions on the Hill. All right, so I just want you to as you're preparing and you're walking through the assessment tool, I want you to really think about the fact that, oh my gosh, no. I'm so sorry. Yvonne, do you have my slides that you could pull up? I'm not sure what's happening here. Thank you. Can we go to slide 2, please? I sincerely apologize, everyone. I'm on my iPad and it is not cooperating today. So I want you to make sure you're documenting it. So as we're looking at category 1, consumer input and involvement under the maximum feasible participation umbrella, right? The thing that motivates us. We have 3 separate standards. We are talking in this space, and some of these I think are really nice to kind of get us started and get our conversation going. The organization demonstrates low-income individuals' participation in its activities. Your organization analyzes information directly from low-income individuals as part of your community assessment, that needs assessment we conduct every 3 years. And your organization has a systematic approach for collecting, analyzing, and reporting customer satisfaction data to the governing board. So very simply, if you've got your org tool pulled up over here, I have mine to the side here and I'm taking a look, you can take a peek under the standard, that blue box at the top of the organizational tool. It gives you guidance, okay? 1.1 in particular is meant to embody maximum feasible participation. And you can utilize materials when you go to upload everything like board minutes of your advisory boards, of tenant, household, tenant, Head Start neighborhood councils, volunteer lists, anything that can contribute to standard 1.1 and demonstrate that you are actively obtaining that feedback, okay? So as you look through the standard tool here, you're gonna look under documentation used, and when we're talking about uploading it for the state, you don't have to upload every single one of those items, as Yvonne said. This is just choosing something that helps you demonstrate that you're meeting that standard so we can check this box and move on. But the key is to make sure that you're documenting this throughout the year. You don't want to be scrambling at the last minute trying to find this information because there are so many technical pieces in the org standards to come, okay? If we move to standard 1.2, the organization analyzes information directly from low-income individuals as part of the community assessment. The uploads we're looking for here are things like your community needs assessment, customer satisfaction surveys, stakeholder interviews with community partners, with clients, perhaps a focus group, documentation that you can provide to demonstrate that you are actively participating in obtaining that feedback and that you're also analyzing the data you receive from it. It's great to have the data, but it needs to be on hand and analyzed in your community needs assessment, as we'll see it when we move into category 3, so that you can demonstrate that you really took that feedback into consideration, used a method to narrow down how you came to the conclusion of what the client identified needs were. If we move on to 1.3, I know we're moving through this quickly because I want to make sure we can scoot on through to Ike and Maryland because they've got some key things. 1.3, the organization has a systematic approach for collecting, analyzing, and reporting customer satisfaction data. Customer satisfaction surveys are a great way to achieve this standard. At our agency, we have those available via QR code in our lobby. We have a link on our website, on our slider. And then when we're out in the weatherization field, or if we have a LIHEAP client, that's come in to receive services, we even have paper surveys that we then enter into the system. They're very simple. 1 to 10 questions. Honestly, I think we narrowed down recently to 5 questions just to kind of get folks through there to get an idea of how their service was that day, if their needs were met, and what additional programs they would like to be referred to or interested in being referred to so that we can sort of expand that operation. We know LIHEAP, especially for our agency, kind of opens the door to weatherization and other programs. So these surveys are helpful to you in analyzing that data and would also fulfill the standard here. You can also upload a customer satisfaction policy or procedure. If anyone would like to kind of debrief about that or talk about that online, I'm here to assist. Accessibility is a really important thing for us to consider when we are working with our clients and making sure that the survey questions we're asking are relevant, that will get us the feedback that we need, and also make sense as they're completing the survey using language that relates to them and really embodies the needs that they have. Okay, I know we're moving quickly, but category 1, maximum feasible participation. Start documenting and preparing these items far before standards. You need to be working on this continuously. Can we go to the next slide, Yvonne? Thank you so much. All right, category 2 is community engagement. And I feel like this is the point in the guide where sometimes I get a little overwhelmed. I'm like, we're still talking about maximum feasible participation. How is this different from category 1? So let's walk through it together and break it down. If we're looking at standard 2.1 and specifically category 2 overall, this one really speaks to me, not just about the clients, but about the engagement of our partners and the folks that we're working with to provide services. So if you're looking at item 2.1, the organization has documented or demonstrated partnerships across the community for specifically identified purposes. An example of something that you would upload here is your MOUs, your contracts, agreements. In our agency, for example, in one of our counties, we provide medical transportation services, and we have contracts with agencies like the Preble County Council on Aging. We would upload our contract or our MOU. The thing to remember about this standard is it doesn't have to be completely formal. Uploading items that give your monitor an idea of how you're working with your partners is also acceptable, and a great way to satisfy the standard and have things on hand alongside your MOUs and your contracts and your explanation of what you're doing is that partner listing. If you remember the IS report, I know we worked annual report, smart forms this year, but if you remember the IS report, that partner listing is essential and it was required. So make sure you're keeping that Excel sheet, that Google sheet up to date. Securely locked, of course. Let's be mindful of everyone's information, but make sure you have that information in there so that when you're satisfying the standard, you can go through and say, okay, Council on Aging, I can pull this document to satisfy this. So we're really showing in 2.1 how we're wrapping around and working with our partners to satisfy the maximum feasible participation standard. 2.2 is highlighted in red, And that is because, as Yvonne showed earlier, the state has identified this area as an area where agencies often struggle meeting the standard. So this standard, you're utilizing information gathered from key sectors in the community and assessing needs and resources during your community needs assessment process or at other times throughout the agency's operations. So this one is tricky because you've got to include all the pieces here. They want to see that you are engaging community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, private sector, public sector, and educational institutions. So to satisfy this standard, we need to be very, very clear in the documents that you're uploading, which could include your community needs assessment, written or online reports, documentation of how things are involved, surveys, focus groups your partners completed. You need to make sure you're fitting those into each of those categories in order for the standard to be met. So the state has communicated very clearly with us that we have one chance to upload this, right? So as you're walking through, 2.2 can be tricky just because it's a little bit bigger than the other items in category 2. Make sure you're hitting each of those sectors. Start to think about your board, start to think about those partners now and what you can pull to satisfy that if you haven't already done so. So 2.2 is the one we're going to keep an eye on here in category 2. Just make sure you're hitting all of those sectors. Okay, items 2.3 and 2.4 communicates activities and results to the community and documents the number of volunteers and hours. These are easy. Check these off your list. And this is easy for 2 reasons. Number 1, social media is our best friend. We know OUCAN has a robust social media presence, and I hope that your agencies do too. We are working on our social media policy and enhancing things. It's been great for things like press releases, for LIHEAP. We tend to engage a lot better, and it's guaranteed that it's sort of getting out to the community and the folks that we serve without worrying if there's space in the paper that day or if we have to pay for publication. So what the state wants to see for this and what meets the standard are things like your annual report, your website, Facebook page, Twitter account, media files of stories that have been published, okay? Community event information, or a communication plan, right? So if you have a communication plan in your agency that you are working from in order to satisfy the standard, make sure you're uploading that with it. Let the state know that this is what you're doing. This is how you handle these types of communications, and attach some examples of that you've conducted throughout the year to satisfy that standard. 2.4, also an easy one to check off your list, okay? Number of volunteers and hours mobilized in support of activities. We use a spreadsheet. If we have volunteers on site for anything, as we're planning events, we make sure that the director in charge of the events enters that volunteer information into the spreadsheet, nothing personally identifying, just the number of hours. That way folks know that information is in there, and by the time I need to upload something for standard 2.4, I'm just pulling that spreadsheet down and turning it into the state so they know I've documented that information. Okay, I think I see a couple questions in the chat. Let me run through category 3 real quick, and then I will close mine out by answering those questions at the end. So Yvonne, can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you so much. Okay, category 3, we're still easing into this. We've got 2 red ones here, but we just need to be mindful of them. So we're still under that maximum feasible participation umbrella. And what we're talking about here is your community assessment or your community needs assessment. As a reminder, that is required every 3 years. And the first thing you should look to when you ramp up your committee to conduct your needs assessment at the required time is category 3 and is this document, to make sure that in the drafting and in preparing your needs assessment, you are hitting all of these standards, because this isn't something you're going to be able to go back and easily fix, right, if it's not already included. So 3.1, the organization conducted a community assessment and issued a report within the past 3 years, okay? That is very simple. To satisfy that, you're going to upload your community assessment document with the date. This could be in electronic or print format. The standard is a little bit flexible here. This is required by the CSBG Act. This is built in to our wonderful community services block grant legislation. And this is the main way that we can communicate with folks on the Hill, with the people making decisions about our funding, and get the word out into the community about the work that we're doing. So every 3 years, community needs assessment, you're going to start with this tool first to make sure you're satisfying this standard and have everything you need. If we look to 3.2, we see that's in red. As part of the community assessment, the organization collects and includes current data specific to poverty and its prevalence related to gender, age, and race ethnicity for your service area. This one's in red because, just like the standard we discussed back in category 2, it's got multiple parts. So the state wants to see that you are evaluating gender, age, race, ethnicity. A fantastic tool to evaluate this information is the American Community Survey that's coming from the US Census Bureau. They have a amazing tool that can help you actually distill down charts and demonstrate this information very cleanly in your needs assessment so that you don't have to put it in paragraph form. You can make it a bit more engaging. The National Community Action Partnership also has a fantastic data hub. And oftentimes they host a training, it's usually once or twice a year, about how to utilize that hub, how to distill down reports that are informed by US Census Bureau information so that you can hit all of these. So 3.2, what you want to be cognizant of is that you are including gender, age, race, ethnicity. Okay, that's the only reason it's in red. Make sure it's all in there so the state can give you a gold star on that item and move on. All right, we're almost done here. 3.3, the organization collects and analyzes both qualitative and quantitative data on its geographic service areas in the needs assessment. So this is important. As you are preparing your needs assessment, we just did ours this past year, and it was approved by our board in December. I am looking at qualitative reports that are put out by regional planning commissions, any of the partners on that list we discussed for category 2. I'm pulling in their information to see what statistics are they using. You know, you absolutely want to pull in your US Census Bureau information for that qualitative piece, but then I'm kind of looking at their quantitative items as well. So how did they conduct their interviews? What did they do? What was their method for distilling the data and figuring out what it meant? Did they conduct focus groups? You can use all of those tools around you, not only to inform how you're going to conduct those items for your needs assessment to ensure maximum feasible participation, but you can cite to them into the report to fulfill this standard, okay? So to satisfy this, you're going to upload your actual community needs assessment document for this standard, right? Or for this item, 3.3, but you want to make sure that what is in that community needs assessment document is qualitative and quantitative data. So we've got to satisfy both of those items there. I have found in our past needs assessment and in needs assessments that I have seen across the state and across the nation for community action, they can be so wonderfully done. There doesn't seem to be a limit to the number of resources that you can engage relevant to your service area as it relates to this type of data. So look at those partner reports, see what other folks are doing, cite to it in here. Let the monitors know that you are also looking at what's happening around you and engaging your partners to ensure you're meeting this standard. All right, and finally, 3.4, the community assessment includes key findings on the causes and conditions of poverty and the needs of the communities assisted. 3.4, if you are looking over at your organizational standards tool, the first thing it says under guidance is there is no required way to reflect this information. Now, that is going to leave this open naturally, right? by this standard, by this very sentence that it describes the standard. It's going to leave it open to subjective interpretation by your monitor. So let's make it easy for them. What they want to see here is that you took all your qualitative data, all your quantitative data, and distilled it down. You took your client feedback, you took your partner feedback, and you and your needs assessment committee sat down and said, okay, how do we prioritize this? How do we organize this information to understand what we need to hear from our clients? So for example, when we did our focus groups for our last needs assessment, as well as our surveys, our grants and compliance manager took that information and distilled it down in a priority listing. We had a transportation heading, we had a housing heading, we had an addiction services heading, and we kind of tallied and figured out how things fit into those groups. And that will satisfy the standard because I'm showing my work of how we have categorized those items and evaluated them to come to the conclusion of the causes and conditions of poverty and the needs of the communities assessed that we serve, okay? So you need to show your work here. I think that's the best way for you to satisfy the standard via the community needs assessment. So the guide here is it makes it feel a little overwhelming, but as long as you're showing your work and explaining how you distill down your data, it's going to be very easy to get this standard checked off your list as well. Okay, I know we ran through this very quickly, and I know we have a couple questions in the chat. So I'm happy to take those now. Let me take a peek over here. Is that okay with you, Yvonne, or do you want me to wait till the end? I apologize.
Nope, you do you, Ms. Key.
Okay.
Listen, we are all enjoying it. You do. I will say that the two questions, so thank you, Amy. The first question, there was a question about the best way to document our social media, and the question is like, do we print them all off? And Amy did provide a comment in terms of provide the link to your social media in the Word document. Sister Keeley, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, make it easy. They can go and check the social media for themselves. I know oftentimes for our heat monitorings, we'll do a nice screen grab of the press release that we've posted to the social media and attach that to the actual release in document form so they can see that it was posted and the date it was posted. So I would agree with that as well. I would roll with Amy's suggestion.
And then Ms. Keeley, your other question is, does 2.2, the whole community needs assessment, or just the areas where the key sectors answered the survey? Do we have to upload the whole community needs assessment in 2.2, or just the key areas where the sectors answered the survey?
So you can answer this in a few ways. So if you upload your entire community needs assessment to satisfy the standard, that needs assessment is going to need to include appendices where the state is actually going to be able to see that those key sectors answered. So you would have your surveys, a copy of an interview if you conducted an interview, perhaps a transcript. So it can be both. If you're uploading the needs assessment, if that's what you're using to satisfy this, I would argue, based on what I'm reading here, that you need to have an appendix that shows that you actually conducted those interviews and provides an example to the state that you did engage those key sectors to get your information. If you are not uploading the needs assessment, which I think is always a best practice just to satisfy this standard, but if you wanted to go another way, you can use documentation, written online reports, or backup documentation of your involvement. So perhaps you're just including those appendices of those broken down interviews and you're giving a header over each one. Make it easy for your monitor, right? That's the best thing you can do here. Here it is for the, let me see, public sector. Here it is for the private sector. Here it is for educational institutions. We had this conversation on this day, and these were the things we distilled from it. It's nice to have that attached to your needs assessment anyway. I know that's a huge document and there's a lot going on in there, but having that in the appendices is going to make it very easy for your monitor to go, check, we've got this handled.
Keeley, you are magical. Listen, we're still a little ahead of schedule. Are there any other questions for Keeley at this time? We're still just a little ahead of schedule, which is awesome. Are there additional questions that Keeley may answer for you at this time? If we don't entertain any additional questions for Keeley, then we can keep the train moving. So thank you again, Keeley, for just being setting the right tone for the training. I think we all understand. Listen, you got to understand our whys. Remember why we're doing this. We're none of us, I don't think, are rich. And if you are, somebody been holding out. So we're not doing this necessarily for money. We love our community. We love what we do. So remember your why. Remember some of the kind of highlighted areas from Keeley's presentation, those areas that we have to work on just a little bit more. And so with that said, we're going to move on to our next presenter. Brother Ike, is on you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good morning, Community Action. Keeley's putting a lot of information out there for us, and we're just going to keep throwing it at you. One thing that, going with the self-assessment tool, I use that. That's printed off. I make notes on it. I also have it saved to my desktop. I type in it. I look at both of them and compact them. That's just my brain working. But I'm more old school. I'm paper pencil person. So, and what we're getting into here with section 4 and 5 is a lot of board information. And I'm trying to get this pulled up.
You need my help? Do you need me?
Let's see. I think I got it. Do you see the presentation? Okay. All right. So I was instructed to go over the vision and direction with the CSBG standards. And first up in section 4 is the organizational leadership. And I'm trying to pull my notes over and it's froze. All right, section 4.1. Governing board has reviewed the organization's mission statements. A lot of this for section 4 and 5 is your board meeting minutes. So your board secretary, your executive assistant, your president, CEO, executive director, secretary, whoever's taking those meeting notes, have a good relationship with them. Be able to give them the information for those minutes, because a lot of us, We're trying to talk real fast, go over a lot of information, and get through a board meeting and explain as well. For the mission statement, you know, bring it up in the board meeting, ask the board if they have any input, how they feel about the current mission statement, if they want to add, subtract, change it completely, and let that be a board discussion. Make sure it's all documented in your board minutes. Sometimes it can take 2 minutes to discuss your mission statement. Sometimes it can take an hour to discuss your mission statement. Just make sure, document. As we're going through these, when I'm presenting to my board, I'm always asking for a board member the chair to get approval of what I'm reporting out. That is a big thing. Getting an approval, getting a second, making the motion pass. That's just me. I'm always documenting, making sure that the board's understanding that section. The next thing on here is the organization community action plan is outcome-based, anti-poverty focused, and ties directly to the community assessment. The best documentation I've seen, community needs assessment. You know, the parts that the community says they need, then I back it up with our work plans. That's easy to put together, and it's in the file and ready to go. The items in red, I'm going to go into a little more detail with on the next slide. 4.3, community action plan and strategic plan document that continues the use of full Roma cycle. 4.4, governing board receives annual update on success of specific strategies, including the community action plan. Like I said, we'll get into the documentation of those on the next slide. The succession plan in place for the CEO or executive director approved by the governing board. It's to my understanding that once it's set and you change a CEO and executive director, have the board review that. Make sure that it is staying up to date and aligns with what the board would want. The comprehensive risk assessment has been completed within the past 2 years and reported to the governing board. The report out can be a minute or two, or it could be longer. It just depends on what you're finding issues with in your agency. Problematic areas for many agencies, section 4.3, which goes to the strategic plan documentation of Roma and so on. One of my best friends I want to call out at OACA, and I see he's on the call, is Josh Summers. Sitting with him in a training once a year, reaching out to him, that will help you get to understand the Romas and the FNPIs, and all your statistics that you need to report out. 4.4, with the governing board receives the annual update on the success of strategies included in the community action plan. The best thing that my best practice would be is I verbally go over all the documentation in my CSBG annual. That's every year, once a year. Matter of fact, our program director is going to do that today at our board meeting. I go over the outcomes of all the programs, what didn't work, what we've seen worked. The client characteristics, I let them view that. The biggest thing is always keeping your board in the know. One thing to help your secretary or whoever's taking your meeting minutes, send them a copy of your annual report if they don't have it. They can look at it as they're typing up the board minutes for the next meeting to get approved. Everybody reviews them to say, oh, yep, I went over this, this, and this, and it's approved. That's how you met that standard. Highlight it in the board minutes and put it with that standard. Board minutes are number 1 in this section, 4 and 5. Board governance. Board governance. We have a lot of red here, and it makes me nervous just thinking about it. You know, our board structure 5.1 is to make sure you're in compliance with the CSBG Act. At least 1/3 democratically selected representatives of low-income community, 1/3 local elected officials or representative from elected officials. County commissioners are great for delegating someone to be on your board, by the way, just throwing that out there. And the remaining membership from major groups or interest in the community. A lot of other nonprofits, reach out to them. Hey, we have a vacant seat. Would you mind sitting on our board? You know, and go through that process. Sections 5.2 through 5.8. We will go over that in the next slide. 5.9, the organization's governing body receives programmatic updates each regular board meeting. One thing I heard of an agency getting a warning about not being verbally said at a board meeting on a report out. It was just in a board report. You know, the board members get the board report. They can see how many HEAP, weatherization, CSBG clients are being served that month, but it was never verbalized and put in the minutes. So that's one thing I want to stress is make sure you're verbalizing your outcomes. Make sure you're keeping your board informed verbally. Section 5.1, board structure. Uploading the board roster and the bylaws to show the agency is being compliant. Agency bylaws should outline the procedures of procurement for filling board seats. So instead of some agencies might have a 5-page bylaw, some might have a 50-page bylaw document. Just take that section out of your bylaws, put it with your board roster, and upload it with the standard. 5.2, the organization's governing board has written procedures that a document of a democratic selection process for low-income board members adequate to assure that they're a representative of the low-income community. So the governing board has the bylaws. In your bylaws, it should state exactly how you are going to get your client or your board members to fill those vacant positions. The written policy, the board policy, procedure manual, bylaws, board meeting minutes. That's a big one. Again, it's all about your board meeting minutes. The new CSBG requirement is that every quarter that we submit our quarterly ROMA is to update our board rosters. Make sure you are watching your board roster, making sure all the positions are filled, and just include that as part of your ROMA report out to your board. You can do that and make that documentation so that way when they approve your ROMA out at the board meeting, they're also approving that board roster that it is correct because it's part of that document. Section 5.3, the organization's bylaws have been reviewed by an attorney within the past 5 years. The easiest way to meet that is in an invoice that has been paid through your fiscal department. The received date, paid date, copy of your voucher, your internal voucher with that. There you go. There's the proof because the invoice is going to state Attorney Yvonne reviewed CAC EHR's bylaws and spent 4 hours. Here's the amount. So that is the best way. Some attorneys will write a letter for you that they have reviewed the bylaws and they found this issue, or they think it looks good, or fix this, send it back to me. All that documentation is good to have with that standard, but the easiest way to meet it is that invoice and proof of payment, in my opinion. 5.4, The organization documents that each governing board member has received a copy of the bylaws within the past 2 years. Ours has a receipt at the end of it stating, Ike Hickman received a copy of the most recent 2021 bylaws approved by our attorney. I sign it, date it, make a copy of it, put it with the board. If you have a board binder or a file for your board, put that with it, and then give it to whoever's taking care of your standards, and then put that right in there. And that is one of the best ways to show of them receiving the bylaws. We're moving on to section 5.5. The organization's governing body or governing board meets in accordance with the frequency and quorum requirements and fills out board vacancies as set out in the bylaws. Meeting quorum and frequency, I understand, is very hard since COVID is over and we are all back to in-person board meetings.
Brother Ike,
Yes.
can we interrupt you for a quick second? We have a great question for you, and since you've gone past that section, if you could go back.
Okay.
5.2, we want to know, does the letter to set a low-income board member have to include language that say that they have gone through a democratic selection process?
Yes. I'm going to say yes. It's
Thank you.
it's so that way your president, CEO, executive director can't just say, oh, because I like you, just come on in and be our board member.
I believe it says that the democratically selected, and
Mhm.
sometimes the best practice is to develop the letter for whoever's appointing them, and they can fill in, but you have that required language.
Correct. Thank you, Marilyn.
Another a great follow-up, Ike, is, are letters required to be uploaded for 5.2?
It's not required, but you can. That's a great way to meet the standard.
Another great practice, best practice. We said thank you. Thank you, Ike.
All right, let's go back to, where was I? 5. The quorum and frequency of the board. Your board sets up how many times a year they're going to meet. Our board does not meet in July or December. That's the 2 months. We have to meet quorum the other 10 months we meet. Board minutes, board roster, bylaws, all that can be used to meet that. Or sign-in sheets too, as well, can help meet that standard to prove, okay, Keely was at the meeting because she signed it, and so was Marilyn, and so on. That is, the sign-in sheets is really, really good to do that way. 5.6, each governing board member has signed a conflict of interest policy within the past 2 years. One good thing, one easy way to do this, have a new board member sign it as soon as they come in as part of your orientation, and keep that. And some people do it yearly, some people can do it every 2 years. January 1st, the email, the document is mailed out to the board member, and get it back from them. At the first board meeting of your year, get them to sign that conflict of interest statement. Take it back. That's a big hit and a big concern from my understanding through the Department of Development, that this is not happening for a lot of agencies. 5.7, the organization has a process to provide a structured orientation for governing board members within 6 months of being seated. Again, bylaws, policy and procedures is the best way to meet the standard. Also, when you have a new board member change, as soon as you get that orientation done, give them a certificate of completion. have them sign, I so-and-so was here on blah, 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 blah date and sat through 4 hours of board orientation. Proof of the board orientation was completed, whether it was on Zoom or in person. And you just put all those with the 5.7 standard. I have a whole file drawer dedicated just to the standards behind me. And each tab has 5.7, 5.8, and so on. And as soon as one of those happen, it goes right in that file. And our executive director's assistant, she also helps me with the board minutes and stuff as well. 5.8, governing board members have been provided with training on their duties and responsibilities within the past 2 years. One of the most best practices I've seen is taking a board member to NCAF or NCAP or OACA or OUCAN trainings, because then they go back and, oh, I went with the team and we went and did this and I learned this and da 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 da. And it's just like word vomit to them. Make sure it's getting documented in your board minutes. Receipts from your board member going to a training and board minutes of them spilling everything they learned at the training in the board meeting is how you meet that standard. And then there was one more. My notes are cut off here because I was handwriting them and then up and scanned them into my computer. Oh, training agendas. I'm a big person. When I go to a training, I get an agenda. I write the date and time and in my handwriting and I initial it. And then I can just put it right with that standard. Okay. I went to the Winter Legislative Conference back in January. I dated it, signed, or just put my initials in my handwriting. So that way it does not look, oh, well, I can just go to the website and print this off. Well, this proves that I went and I have it and it's in my file. On to section 6. Strategic planning. This is one of my weaknesses, and I get the honor of speaking with it and about it. 6.1. The organization has an agency-wide strategic plan in place that has been approved by the governing board within the past 5 years. Best way to get a board member or the board approval is have board members sit on that meeting, sit in those sessions, have them come to it. That's one of the best things you can do with your strategic plan. As we see, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 are in red. Those are problematic areas, and we will go over that in the next slide. Section 6.5, the governing board has received updates on progress meeting the goals of the strategic plan within the past 12 months. One thing that we do for that is sign-in sheet, minutes of everybody's reporting out, put it in the file, done, good to go. Section 6.2, the approved strategic plan addresses reduction of poverty, revitalization of low-income communities, and or empowerment of people with low incomes to become more self-sufficient. I'm surprised that this one is a hard one for the agencies to meet. The community needs assessment and the strategic plan. Put your survey outcome with your strategic plan and put it together. Put it right with that standard. You don't have to put the whole book in there. I believe ours is 50 some pages. Because we put a lot of wording in ours. Take your outcomes, take your survey outcomes with your strategic plan. Put it together. It's met. That's one of the simplest ways that I can think of to meet that standard. Section 6.3. The approved strategic plan contains family, agency, and or community goals. again, strategic planning, community needs assessment. You have your surveys from your other nonprofits and your job and family services and everybody else. Put that together. Meet the goal. 6.4, customer satisfaction data and customer input collected as part of the community assessment is included in the strategic planning process. The QR code, I would like to see that come into our agency with SurveyMonkey and starting using that way, and then it'll automatically analyze for you. You can take your customer survey reports and implement those from section 2 and 6 to see if you're meeting all the needs of the actual clients coming into your building, that's walking through your facilities, that's clicking on your link that is on your website. You know, put that with your strategic plan or your community needs assessment as well, because when it comes to community needs assessment time again, you're going to need to look at all that information. Okay, so we did bus tickets last year. We only had 10 families use that, or 10 individuals, however you may look at it. Do we want to offer that service or delegate so much CSBG service to that program? Because they're coming in and asking for car repair or other transportation needs. Look at the transportation as a whole. Siloing down one way is not the way to go. Pull your information from your customers, what they need, and put that with the standard. And that's pretty much all I have. Just remember, board meeting minutes is your best friend. Work with your executive director assistant. Become friends with that person. Help them by providing them your information to get out to the board.
Thank you, Ike. I don't know about you all, but section 5, when I saw the red, and when we consulted with ODOD, it made me very, very nervous. But it's something about Ike's delivery that makes me know that we can get through this, y'all. So we got some great suggestions, some great recommendations, and some best practices. We are still a little ahead of schedule, so we can still take some questions. Thank you to Sister Amanda Stewart Williams. Can we talk about 6? Go for it, Amanda. We have a little bit of time, so please unmute yourself and share with us. Let's talk about 6.
Yeah.
Amanda, did you want to share? Did you want to bring to the group your concerns about 6, section 6? Oh, maybe she is unable to mute. Yep, that's what it. I wondered. Okay, Amanda, we still have a little time. Can you maybe put it in a chat? And while she's doing that, are there any other questions about section 5, some of our problematic areas? Are there some other best practices that, after you've heard from Keely and Ike already, that for their sections that you would like to share? We do have another question. It was stated in 5.2 letters were not required, but I see a comment that they are required. Which is it? Sister Amy Bullard said they are not required. So if section 5.2, letters are not required per Amy Bullard. Any other questions? We're still going to wait for Amanda just one more second, because I'm sure she's typing her question, her comment in the chat. In the meantime, are there any other questions, comments? Again, Amy is sharing with us in the chat that in regards to section 5.2 and the letters not being required, the written procedure is preferred, is what Amy has shared.
Yvonne, can we get clarification on that? The letter's not required to be uploaded for the standard review, but is there, don't want no misunderstanding that they're not required to have on file for each member.
That's a good point. I'm sorry I closed my camera, guys, but I am still listening. And Alicia and I were actually having a chat conversation about this. So when you have your monitoring, that is something that could be asked for at the monitoring to verify that you have those letters in place, because that is one of our requirements in Ohio. But as far as meeting the standard actually asks for the written procedure. If you don't have a written procedure, but you can prove you're doing something, I think the letters would meet that. But the standard itself is asking for the procedure.
Okay, thank you, Amy. We appreciate, I wasn't sure you were going to be able to stay on, but we are so glad to have you and Alicia here. So thank you so much for being able to help us filter through some of these questions and some of the concerns. I'm just going to note for the group that Amanda did share that 6.3 appears to be a bit problematic because it conflicts, that their strategic plan was focused on streamlining agencies to move forward in years. So as we continue to have these conversations and perhaps some follow-up dialogue, we will continue to address those areas. Now, at this time, I'm going to move on. We have our last presenter. So I am going to invite Marilyn to share her screen, and she's going to bring us home.
Okay. Thank you so much. Great to see or hear everyone. This, to me, it is a beast, you know, the organizational standards, but they're doable. Hopefully everyone, since they're reviewing 22 to 23, everyone has their teams prepared looking at each section. The teams could be comprised of that section of staff. And it really doesn't matter if it's the director of housing or director of Head Start. Everyone should, in the agencies, should be familiar with the standards, because everyone's servicing the staff. Can you see the screen? Can you hear me?
I have it up for you, Marilyn. Go ahead. I have it up for you. So just tell me next slide.
Okay. So the teams should be made up of perhaps a couple of board members, so they can give you that critical eye, volunteers, and the department heads, middle management, and even some staff. If you divide it by sections, it's certainly going to make it easier. And you perhaps already have a file cabinet, you have a banker's box divided with the sections and just dropping and looking for the information. Keep this governance review on your agendas in your departments, at the executive level, on the board training. I know at MyCap, I would report out with the governance and planning. They were key. That's where the reports from the directors would go first. That showed the demographics, what they did for the month. They were due the 10th of each month, and then I would compile into one report. And that's always on the agenda, both at the governing and planning level, plus at the board meetings. So developing these systems, because now you're going annually, developing those systems are going to be critical in the success to getting to 100%, because not just one person can do this standard. It has to be a team effort. It has to be everybody held accountable. Top management, executive director, of course, will always, understanding the importance of this, will support whoever is given the lead. It could be the Roma implementer, which meets the requirements, but some agencies may not have that and may have another staff person, but they can't do it by themselves. They have to have the management's team's support. This 7 human resources and category 8 for financial and category 9 are very important. The team should be made up of those departments, plus the CEO, the executive director, the administrative secretary, manager, whoever's at that board meeting, because the compliance is met with a lot of minutes, that secretary or administrative executive assistant must be coming in, must be trained in this area, because that person that's perhaps responsible for the compliance is not going to be at the board meetings or at the committee meetings to ensure that the language in the minutes reflect what's required. So best practice is to train everyone, to train the secretaries at that level. They could just use the tool and the sections and they highlight what they have to have at the minutes. So if one forgets, there's always someone that can remind, oh, we need to change that. We have to make sure that this is compliant with the standards. So hopefully that is helpful. My slide starts with the important points that Yvonne pointed out. Make sure that you don't upload anything for your review until you're absolutely sure that you've met the standard. Reach out to your field rep if you're not sure that's on the language, on the requirement before you upload, because you're only going to have that one time. There's not going to review a correction period. There will not be a correction period. So if you have to meet it because you're reviewing 22 to 23, and after looking at everything, you cannot meet that requirement, then you mark yourself that you've unmet it, but you have an opportunity to say how you're going to meet it. Fill out the form. One of the things, if you're going to pull up the documents, I know the state was asking that you highlight and you add the page of where you're going to, if the document has 30 pages, page 22, highlight that area so they can go easily to it. Like I said, let's make it easy, but follow the instructions to the point, and make sure that you get close to 100%. And if you can't, just fill out the section and say how you're going to make that correction. So starting January 1st, this is a go-to at all times. Everybody, since you have the team well-trained, everyone, the key players, top management, middle management, employees, some board members that are on your teams, you should be able to get as close, if not at 100%. So the human resources piece, and I'm going to go overview because there is a lot. You could go to the next slide. I thought I was using my slide.
No,
okay.
I'm advancing the slides for you, but is this the correct slide?
That's perfect. Yes, that's the next one. Correct?
Okay, so just let me know to go to the next when you're ready.
Yeah, when you are looking at the HR policies, this standard is broken out into 3 different areas. And so this is the policies and procedures. You want to make sure that your tabs are every 5 years, and you mark when your policy should state when they were last revised. And that way it'll make it very easy for you to make sure that it's the right document to upload. So 7.1, 7.2, and 7.7, you could look at it quickly. Note that I put on the whistleblower policy, no requirement for additional review, but it's good practice that the board periodically reviews the policy to ensure operating compliance. So although you're meeting these standards, try to always go above. Do that and then some, so that you can meet the standards. Next. The second part of the HR governance, and there's some problematic areas, is the governance. So annually, the board conducts a performance appraisal for the CEO, executive director. What I did with this, and every agency, I suppose, could assign it differently, but as the HR responsible person, I would work closely with the board chair. The CEO, of course, knew that around February, it's time to do the evaluation. So I'd work with them. We could do it in SurveyMonkey. Got to know your board members. Do they like computer access? Would they rather do it at paper? But you want to make sure that you get maximum participation. It would start with the governance review, the executive committee, everybody just trying to get this evaluation out. would suggest sometimes to the CEO or the executive assistant to have some papers in paper available for at the board meeting. Ask them to come a few minutes earlier to fill it out. The board chair will receive the annual evaluation and compile it, review it with the executive committee, meet with the CEO, and then go for full board approval. So you have to have those systems in place so that you can make sure that annually you can meet this. It's not a hard, if it's not being met, it's because someone's not taking the lead on that. And perhaps the HR director can, or the executive assistant, remind the board chair and the CEO that it's time to do the evaluation. Now, this is going to go in compliance with some of the other, benefits. Look at the salary, all of that. You can compile all that together with the annual review. Every 5 years, you want to make sure that the job descriptions for all positions have been updated within the past 5 years. You want to notate the job description and say revised on the date. If it didn't need to be revised, you could say reviewed on the date and just type it at the bottom of that. Next. So number 3 is the effective HR management piece. So these areas are going to show how effective and the systems that you have in place. You maintain the policy of regular written evaluations of employees. So you want to pick a month. So April may be evaluation month. The directors already know they can start working on that to make sure that by the beginning of May, they have all their evaluations in. You could pick the date that you choose. Just make sure that it's happening and that HR is receiving that. 7.8, as needed, more frequent than annual. So when you're doing orientation, that usually happens pretty fast. Sometimes the checklist, the new hire checklist, making sure that the employee signs that checklist, states it, everything that you've done, reviewed, is listed on there, will meet this compliance. If you don't do it right at the beginning when they're hired, and you have to do it according to, has to show that it was done within the 60 days of hire. The 7.9, as needed, more frequent than annually. So you develop your own systems for this. Keep this for this training, including Roma. Should keep it at perhaps in the training or the meetings that happen in the department. Leave it on the agenda, have somebody report out, how's it going? Are you having any difficulties meeting any sections? And it could be discussed. That is good. With the sign-in sheet, you're showing that you're training the staff, that you're discussing it, that it's in the forefront. Next.
Marilyn, before we go on, and thank you for this, a great question. On 7.3, agencies, one of the agencies have over like 300 staff. Should we be updating, the job descriptions for all of those, or just those paid from the CSBG and the management staff?
Well, they're looking at the CSBG programs, but if you don't want to worry about, oh, I didn't do this program, I didn't do, if you do them all and you review them all, some of them may not need any changes, but you mark it that you did review it and nothing has changed. I just found it easier to just do everything unless something was very specific that doesn't impact. But if you have a practice that you do all evaluations annually, because some may have fallen out, it gives you an opportunity to look at everything and just make sure that you type when you reviewed it.
Thank you, Marilyn. And then just on the same the subject, if anyone needs any kind of verification from us for today's training, because we're talking about it, and let's be honest, we want to make sure that we're compliant. So if you need anything from OUCAN today to verify your attendance at today's training, please contact us through the info@oucan.com email address. Last question before you move on to the slide, Marilyn. So going back to 7.3, what actually needs to be uploaded? Is it all 300 job descriptions?
Oh, no, it says here, this reference, the time frame you need to show, it says job descriptions. So I would upload those CSBG job descriptions. Make sure that they're noted when you reviewed them, if they were changed or you reviewed or revised, reviewed and revised, whatever you want to use. So I would definitely upload the CSBG.
Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome. So I just put in beyond compliance. What does that look like in HR? It could be to design performance management as a process instead of performance appraisal as an event. And the process meaning that if you know that someone is struggling with either customer service or something in their job, that you somewhere during the year that you have documented, that you have sat down and reviewed, you've got a plan of action for them to improve. All of that is good HR management practices. You're customizing training for them. You're developing them an area either to advance or to improve their current job. You establish coaching and mentoring, matching them up with someone if they're possibly someone that can move up, possibly someone within the department that has some excellent skills that can help them improve in their own areas. You match them up. So document all of that, date it, when the follow-up, when did you meet, have the employees sign, both supervisor and those involved sign. You can upload as beyond compliance. Those are examples in HR that you can use. Next. I believe I saw another question pop up.
Yep, I was just getting to it. So the question that in the past, we were encouraged to have board approval for all job descriptions. Is that still the standard?
And that is, what is it, 7 point?
Yes. Yes, that would be the simplest way. I'm
Mhm.
looking at the document and it, you can get job descriptions. The standard is that all positions, not staff people, positions, have job descriptions updated every 5 years. And one of the documentations on this form is board or committee minutes noting that the documents have been updated. And so you would say, we updated all job descriptions most recently in December of 2023. Or, and as long as it's not been 5 years, that would meet the standard. We're really trying this year to have you have to provide as little as possible because it's still going to be a lot. There's no way around it. But if you board or the appropriate committee notes that the documents have been updated and you have minutes that say that, that's an acceptable document to meet the standard.
Yeah, and the program and planning would take, any changes in position changes and discuss that in the job description and that. So that committee would be good, would show out in the even board minutes because then they report out, their reports go to the board. So thank you, Amy, for clarification on that.
And that's great information too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to make a note on the HR with the policies to make sure that any changes to the personnel handbook within those 5 years, they should be given out. Make sure you have documentation that it has been communicated to the staff, that it has gone through board approval with an attorney. Now, if you have an attorney on board, which is what my CAP used, she worked closely with myself and the CEO to update and make changes as needed. Once it's updated, sometimes in 5 years, it doesn't need any changes because none of the state or our laws have changed or anything. The state doesn't give you a list of things that you must have in there. So you want to make sure that state, federal, and local laws are updated, but make sure that you are showing proof that you communicated to the staff they received it. It could be through email that shows the date when everyone received it. And on the other end, sign-in sheets that they actually did receive the changes. The next section of financial operations and oversight it's huge. It goes from the financial piece goes from to I think 13. So yes, 8.1 to 8.13. This is very important, a lot of board work. So your executives, and the finance staff is very important in this area. All required filings and payments related to payroll. And that means everything from local, federal, state taxes, health insurance, disability, flex accounts, retirement payments. So if they have a drawer in their department that says organizational standards, as they make those payments, they could drop some in that file where they don't have to dig it up later on. So just developing systems and understanding the staff in that department, understanding that this is what's going to be required from them. The organization-wide budget is very important. It's a forecast for the upcoming fiscal year. This is an area that most agencies also need to improve in. So if you don't have a good example of an organization-wide budget, ask your another agency how they meet this and share, because this is a big piece. Next. $9.3.
Wait,
No, I said you jumped a little bit too far.
I went too fast.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go back.
I think there was a couple more slides in the finance area. Finance area it's a lot of minutes. Yes, the next one.
Okay, and so while we play tag on the slides real quick, question on 8.8, Marilyn. Does fiscal just choose a few examples for each of the items to meet the standard? So in 8.8, does fiscal just choose a few examples for each item to meet the standard? Is it kind of like randomly selected? Is there a—
Well, you want to go with the guidance. What meets the guidance? They give you a list of things, so you want to make sure that you meet the guidance. So the guidance says documentation may include information received from a payroll service. So yeah, you upload, it says state, federal taxes. So just one for each of those. Retirement, you would meet the requirement on that. So as long as it says retirement, insurance, and payroll. So you want to make sure that you upload to meet the requirements. The guidance is really what tells you, and then they give you some examples of what to put in. Amy, did you want, I don't know if Amy wants to say anything on that, but this one, the guidance is saying includes state, federal, state, local taxes.
Yeah, includes federal, state, and local taxes, as well as insurance and retirement payments. Right. That would be a really important one. And I'm just thinking about this one because I hadn't even gotten this far in my review of these and the detail we're trying to add. In the past, would you say that you have given like 2 or 3 years worth of this? Because my initial thought is, well, if you gave me the year end, I don't know if it's a cumulative report. If these are cumulative filings, the year end would work. If you're doing them quarterly or monthly and it's just showing that particular time frame, then you might need to do for a whole year. I would think 1 year's worth would be enough, but maybe Alicia knows what they've done historically. You're muted, Alicia. Can't hear you. Go down to the bottom left. Oh. There you go. Oh. You hit it again, I think. It's not sticking. There we go. Oh dear.
Yeah. The reports do show annually. Some of them, they are filed quarterly or annually. So it does show if you do the annual, all the quarters.
Yeah, and I would think then that would be enough. And for I
for
think,
some of them. So,
yeah. Mhm.
So I would say look at the guidance, be careful. There's keywords on there, and so that means that you're going to pick a couple of things. It's asking for 2 items instead of 1. So includes, you make sure that you have those. Look at the guidance first. Be clear on the guidance, looking for those keywords, and then making sure that you're meeting each of one of the guidances with what you're uploading. I think that's the easiest way to look at it, or you're going to miss out. If you just pick one out of the guidance, then you're going to miss out on your upload. So meeting the bullets, and if you can meet them with one document, all 4, then you've met it. You want to highlight it and you want to note that you meet the guidance.
Mhm.
Yvonne, there's some bullets in between there, but I'll just there's a page that's not popping up before this. There was really some important on audits. You want to make sure that whoever has this section, which I recommend is the financial staff, the CEO, the executive assistant, your finance board member, committee chair or something would be great to be critical in this area. There's a lot of ands on this, just the 990 being reviewed, being in the minutes. There's a lot of minute requirements on this. The fiscal policies have been reviewed by staff within the past 2 years. You want to make sure that you've done that and documented with when it was done and the review. The accounting procedures manual, a lot of times, some procedures will be changed and you forget to go to the finance accounting procedures manual, making sure that you have changed that and updated to your current practice. Making sure that the audit is presented, the board minutes has the necessary language that's required by the guidance in the standard. So the finance category 8 is very intense. Please pay attention to that and the keywords to make sure that you can meet those compliances. The
Thank
next
you,
section.
Marilyn. Before you move on, I just want to let's do some house keeping check-ins and look at the chat really quickly. So Jane, can you give us a thumbs up if we were able to address your question? I know you still wanted to make sure that, in previous years when the monitors would visit in person and you would pull out the binder. So did we address it? If you can just give us a thumbs up just to make sure. We still have a little bit of time, but we want to make sure that we answered your question correctly. So can you give us a thumbs up somewhere on your comment and let us know that, yes, we responded to that. While we're waiting for Jane to make sure, Amanda had a great question too, Marilyn, about 8.5 and solicited bids process. Does that have to include proof of public notice requirement? So when it comes to the solicited
The auditors switch, you want to make sure that the guidance that you have the list of people that you send it out to, that you have the announcement where you and the list of people that it was sent to. If it's under contract with a firm that has been conducting it for the 5 or more at the time of the first standards assessment, the bid process needs to occur as soon as the current contract is completed. That deadline is what's important in that guidance too. Not only the documentation that you're going to upload of the announcement, the list of folks that you send it out, but also that the bid process occurred as soon as the current contract is completed. So look at that very closely too.
Thank you, Marilyn. And then one last clarification. I just want to make sure that Alicia wasn't able to get her sound to work. And she did put in the chat, we were still talking about the financial operations and oversight, 8.8, 8.9. And she did confirm that the latest quarter is what was accepted in the past. So I just want to make sure everyone saw that note as well. All right, Marilyn, I'm done interrupting you into our next.
Oh, no, that's okay. This is a beast. Like I said, this is a big one. and it's one that has to really, your teams really work closely to make sure that you're following the guidance and that you can upload what will meet those requirements. So the data and analysis, I was telling Ike and Keely that the NCAP and I think Ike mentioned it too, the NASCSP that was sent to you, you have to take the time to look at that because there's some video there for each section, except for this data and analysis. There was not one there. But for all others, there are some videos that are extremely helpful, that are short but concise to what you need to look at. So this data analysis to me is it's huge in the sense, but it's work that everyone is doing. Everyone's doing in all these sections great work, I'm sure. The issue sometimes and the challenge is that are you documenting it and how you're documenting it, and are you looking at it, and are you gathering it, and are you sharing both with staff, with board members, with all the stakeholders that you work with. And so if everyone can work towards that and provide that, then this becomes easier. I know that not everyone has data collection system software, but sometimes you have to use a spreadsheet, Excel. So if everyone that comes in through your agency doors, if you're using the holistic approach, would fill out an OCEAN form. And so you already have the age and the people, the area, the zip code, the demographics that's so needed in so many of these other areas, and specifically in this area. So require your monthly reports from your departments to include the demographic for that month that they service, so the board can see and have them share it in their department meetings so they can see who they're servicing and what areas are you servicing, which zip codes are the highest areas. That's the way how the staff and the board get to know the needs for so many other areas to meet the standards. They get to know is how you gather the information. The holistic approach, if they're coming in for HEAP, the staff are trained to make sure that they leave there with their needs met. So it may mean that HEAP cannot meet the food or the diaper bank or workforce, but they're going to refer them to it. But the system is already, now you move them into the CSBG. So, and you do it seamlessly because you have collected the data and you can show that you're servicing them in a holistic approach in different areas of the agency or referrals outside of the agency. So however you need to meet the data analysis, it's something that needs to be discussed with the team that has this section, with the CEO and all those your computer folks, to make sure that you can take these requirements and be able to share them and use them in all the other areas of organizational standards. Any questions on this? So if you notice on how to meet this compliance, it says strategic plan update, which indicates that if you use the data and you analyzed it and you reviewed it, it may mean that some of your CSBG programs may need some tweaking and your strategic plan may need some tweaking. And so I know to change your work plans, you have to, of course, go through the process of perhaps tweaking that, but it's doable. And you can reach out to your field reps and talk about, because you have this analysis that shows that perhaps you're not hitting the mark as you wrote it, and you would like to add or change the verbiage to make sure that you can meet this standard. That's all I have, Yvonne. If anybody has any other questions, I can answer them at this time.
Well, while we are opening up for questions, I know we're virtual, but if you can hit your screen emojis and join me in thanking Keely Gustin, Marilyn Montez, and Ike Hickman for a wonderful, wonderful training. I know I learned a couple more things. You always think you know, but sometimes you just don't know, and you get these great recommendations and suggestions, and all of that was today. And I also want to say thank you to Amy Bullard and Alicia Alexander for joining us as well. It is an awesome experience to be joined by our funders and by our partners in this work. You know, we don't do this in isolation, and a lot of the things that Marilyn said about, you know, data analysis and that collaboration piece is really, really important. So awesome. So I see we do have some hands up and some great comments coming in the chat. Yes, the recording, you will have access to the recording. Again, it will be on the OU Can YouTube channel. And right now, I think we definitely we're going to share the slides with you. You're going to get all of that information in your post event email notification. So we always say thank you to you because, again, we don't do this in isolation. So you will have all of the documentation, the slides, the recording, everything will be to you. Sharon, my real boss, she said by Monday. So by Monday. So that means she's really saying don't bug us anymore until Monday. That's when you'll get it. All right. I saw a hand up. Miss Curie, I believe. Oh, that was to say thank you and great. Okay, awesome. Okay, we love that. We love getting accolades. Thank you. Any questions? We're still a little ahead of time. I mean, look how dope we are. Any questions? Any sharing? Any comments? Anyone want to drop a nugget, something that you learned or something you've tried at your organization, some best practices? This is what we're here for. So anyone have anything else that they would like to share?
I would
Can you
just
hear
like to
me?
state out that, you know, all of us that are on this call, we're all in this together and going to help each other as we can. Just feel free to reach out. It's not a problem. Just feel free to reach out to us.
That was great, Ike. Thank you. Yes, I agree. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, we're going to let you go a little early. Just take a screen grab of this as well. These are the upcoming OU Can events, and we hope that you will continue to join us. So we're going to be launching our new website next month. So look out for that. In May, we are running another voter registration education public service announcement campaign. And so again, we're going to be coming to you and ask for your participation because we know this is going to be a pretty heavy election season. We continue to watch not only just nationwide, but globally what is happening. And so we want to make sure that our constituents are as educated about the process as possible so that they can exercise their right to vote. And all my men, the brothers, the males, all of you, listen, we have a great lineup coming for you on our men's forum. Registration is open. You can simply register right now just using the QR code right there on your screen. But men, you do not want to miss this forum. It's going to be pretty heavy. And we broke the news to the ladies the other day. The men boxes, the men registration materials are way better than what the women got earlier this year for the Women's Leadership Symposium. So I'm just letting y'all know the boxes are better. And then moving forward, we're going to have our third part of the statewide training on Roma. We hope that the real resident expert in our network that we all love and adore, Brother Josh, will join us for that. And then going into October, the Leader Link Summit, and then the annual meeting. So thank you again for joining us. Please, again, look forward on Monday. You should receive all of your information, all of the slides. The YouTube channel will be up. You'll get the presentation materials and documentation. If there is anything else we can answer for you, please hit us up at info@ohioucan.com. Thank you again for attending today's statewide training. Have a wonderful weekend.